There is one great story, and in fact I was thinking about it in the car. England had been beaten at the semi-final of the World Cup in 1990. Somebody asked Terry Venables, who was there, what's the criteria for the New England manager? Jimmy says, I'll tell you what the criteria is. Must have played at the highest level, must have been a manager at the highest level, must have been a director at the highest level, must have the respect of the Football Association, must have the respect of the press and the media, must have the respect of the supporters. So Langdon went, Jimmy, who on this planet have got all those qualifications? Jimmy went, me. And he wasn't a joke. He spoke with more conviction and more self-confidence than any other person I've ever met in my life.
It's hard to describe anyone that has given football as much in so many different areas as Jimmy Hill.
I would like to be a dictator.
How could I describe it without being too much over the top? He was like a messiah to Coventry.
The bearded wonder. Remarkable character, a complete one-off.
You know, he used to wear that bow tie and go up with the Scots fans' nose of it.
He was a cartoonist dream, wasn't he? He had the perfect face for the caricature.
It feels almost as if I'm touching a bare lady's bottom.
Be quiet, will you?
He was always going to fill up lots of time, he had lots of opinions. The biggest problem with Jimmy was shutting him up.
Did he change football? The answer is yes.
It was Jimmy who got the 3 points for a win.
Started all-seater stadiums. Talk about a man for all seasons. He was a man for everything.
A man who revolutionised the way the professionals were paid.
A charmer. He was a good guy.
There's no question Jimmy Hill leaves a legacy in football. Which is the most important part of it, I don't know, but the fact that there are so many probably makes him completely unique.
When he died last December, there was no better place than here to celebrate 87 years that had burst with life. This was a place he loved, and that loved him in return. The heart of the city of Coventry, because Jimmy Hill was once the beating heart of Coventry City.
I think for me he was a great innovator, a pioneer. The legacy of many of the things that he introduced are things that we take for granted today. We're actually saying goodbye to someone who's played an enormous part in English football, and that's why I think so many people from the top end of football are here today to pay our respects to him in this way.
I caught the end of a phone-in asking who was the most significant person ever from the city of Coventry. I was shocked to hear Dad had come second to Lady Godiva. He was Mr. Football and a real-life Roy of the Rovers, with a brain and with a chin. The recurring themes in Dad's action-packed life seem to have been football, charity, and wives.
It was overwhelming when he passed away, the kindness and the admiration, the affection for Jimmy that came across so openly and so incredibly. It was heartwarming and bewildering and overwhelming. I will treasure and cherish those messages forever.
I thought it was a really moving tribute to Jimmy. Quite emotional, but fun as well, and passion, which are the things that Jimmy had in abundance. I just wish he could have been alive to see it, because he would have loved it.
My memory of Jimmy was somebody who cared, who loved life, enjoyed the good things of life, and was prepared to work for them.
When you separate the celebrity from the person, yeah, he was the son of a milkman in South London, and he came an awful long way.
Well, they were very happy days, although my mum particularly had a rather sad life in some ways, because her first husband was killed in the First World War and left her with 2 children, one of whom, a girl, Irene Panton was her name, played cricket for England, but she was killed as a result of a motorcycle accident in 1935, and my stepbrother, her brother, was killed in the last war. So really it was a very unhappy time for my mother, but she was indomitable, she had a great spirit, and she rose above all that, and I was the only child of her second marriage to Mr. William Hill.
never went to university, was a chimney sweep, became a young footballer at Brentford, which was my club, and ended up changing football and then changing broadcasting.
When he first came to Fulham, he started off a wing half, and then they converted him into an inside forward, and we scored a lot of goals as a team, but I mean, Jimmy got more than his fair share of goals.
I think he did good career as a player actually at Fulham by the time with Johnny Haynes and Bobby Robson, a lot of really good players. They had a pretty good team at the time, Fulham.
I knew Jimmy Hill very well. I played with Jimmy Hill at Fulham, and nothing wrong with Jimmy Hill.
His big thing was his stamina. He ran all day. I mean, tremendous energy. You could rely on Jimmy to give you 100% everything. He'd be running when everybody else is, you know, exhausted, and he'd still be going.
Hill tries to tell the referee his job, and no doubt will be spoken to by the referee for that bit of nonsense from Jimmy Hill.
Jimmy was that front man. I mean, if he walked into a room, he had presence, he had his beard. He was swashbuckling as a player. Perfect for him to be leading the PFA.
When he became chairman of the Players' Union, he didn't have to go far for his first political scrap.
Rumours that Haynes is seeking a transfer have made headlines, and today he went to Craven Cottage for talks with the management.
Is it true you're going to leave Fulham, Johnny?
It was all about scrapping the maximum wage. Footballers could be paid 20 quid a week and no more. Johnny Haynes was the cause, and his Fulham teammate was just the man to fight it.
Footballers should get paid more. It's the amount of money that goes into the game.
But why do you think we should be paid more just for playing a game?
Well, thousands go to see it, so we really should be paid. They pay money to see us, so we should get what comes out of the gate, if you understand.
Jimmy, of course, he had a personality to not worry about who he was fighting against. He was fighting for every English player.
All I can see at this moment is that it is like the beard and the most glorious overcoat I'd ever seen. He was 6 foot plus, and he had this stature, and he was a leader of men.
Because of the character that he had, he was prepared to stick the chin out all the time, with a beard or without it.
This is Jimmy Hill, Fulham's famous bearded inside right, shaving with the new Remington, the world's fastest shave.
It was more a Walter Raleigh beard than it was all, you could see him as D'Artagnan.
Why don't you go on strike if you've got all the players in your union? It isn't our intention to go on strike because there's a phrase, softly, softly, catchy monkey, which is perhaps our maxim.
It was fighting to open the doors. You know, where are we going? You can't keep limiting us to £20 a week because your clubs are earning more money than that. Why aren't we being successful? We're the players. We produce, and why can't we have more money?
Well, this is a thing that's come up, and it's really stale. You see, a footballer does very well, a star footballer. First of all, he gets £20 a week. He gets £17 a week when he's not playing.
Directors in these days, it seemed to be old owners who owned the club for 100 years or something, you know. And I think that was the way football was in these days. But if he was to deal with some of the directors today, I think we'd maybe make a different opinion of it.
At meetings in Birmingham and London, the stars have never been so militant or outspoken as they are today.
If the 4 points raised today are not brought about by the management committee, I honestly think strike action will be demanded.
Now, Jimmy, the union has been negotiating for better conditions ever since there's been a union, and that's 60 years. Football league clubs have done nothing yet to suggest they're even prepared to meet you halfway.
We must face the possibility that in a month's time there will be complete deadlock. These players today have faced it, but nevertheless they instructed us to issue this resolution from the meeting, and it was passed unanimously.
So you would be satisfied with a promise in the next month?
Well, it isn't our committee. We would put it back to the players and say exactly what had been promised or what had been stated by the league, and then it's up to them to see whether they are going to be satisfied or not.
The club owners gave in. The maximum wage was scrapped. The near striker celebrated the goal with restraint.
Well, I wouldn't say we've achieved all. I mean, I don't think we'd ever have settled it if we achieved everything. That there would have been a strike, and I don't know what would have happened. But I think we've achieved more or less the things that are going to benefit football, which is the important thing.
I mean, he had that great energy about him, and he was outspoken. I mean, he was outspoken, and I think that was the pivotal moment in his life.
What did you start, Jimmy? Johnny Haynes became the first £100 a week player. They earn that per second now. But at the time...
Yes, an iconic day, that's special. You can tell by the smiles on the face that they've been successful. I'm sure that would be one of the best dinners they ever had. No strike, solidarity, players' union, well established, and a basis for the future. And instead of it being the demise of the game, which a few against it had predicted, 5 years later we won the World Cup.
He would have had no idea the implications and the repercussions of that change in the law. And every time he read the paper and he saw a 6-figure or 7-figure number of another player getting this, that and the other, he said, that can't be true. I said, it's in the paper, James, it's true.
When you look back, the bearded wonder pulled it off.
His playing days were over. And having just won his first trophy as a union leader, he now quit politics too. He was leaving London and heading for the Midlands.
The familiar beard is still there, but today Jimmy Hill is building a new career on the opposite side of the fence, as manager of 3rd Division, Coventry City.
Good shot, well done. 5 goals and a corner. Come on, Reg, you just stood there dithering.
Jim came along, it was a kind of very much a down-at-heel club. It was a dump, basically. The whole place had really sort of gone to seed, and it was Jim that came in like a whirlwind, I think, and just sort of inspired the whole city, just dragged it up from by its bootlaces.
When I came here, I came in a tracksuit. I put it on within half an hour of arriving at the club, and really all I thought of was making them play better and getting results.
He was a man that you just stood and admired, but his enthusiasm and his movements of his body, they never seemed to coordinate. And we used to laugh at him a little bit, you know, with that passion and the commitment he had. Everybody knows he was innovative, but he was so far advanced, you just couldn't keep up with the man at times.
And not only did he build a very good team, but he had all sorts of ideas, you know, the sky blue train that used to take the fans to an away game, and the song that they still sing, the boating song. He was up to every, I was going to say gimmick, but I'd probably bet fairer to say development that he could lay his hands on.
Coventry are still on top of the 2nd Division and favourites for the championship.
It's just fabulous. I mean, all I think about now is the sky blue. Monday morning at work.
The shops, everywhere you go in the shops, everything's sky blue. See, it's only since Jimmy Hill came here, though.
The lady over there fainted. Would you pick her up off the floor? Number 134 is the winner of this wonderful automobile, made in Coventry.
Didn't he also introduce the first ever colour programme that you get? And the list is absolutely endless. Jimmy was just miles ahead of anybody.
Yeah, he brought the whole city up. It wasn't just a football club, he brought the whole city up. And like I said, this thing about, you know, shoulders back, chest out, and that's something that Coventry, maybe as a Midlands kind of city, doesn't do all the time. But I think Jim got it.
He was like, how could I describe it without being not too much over the top? He was like a messiah to Coventry.
All these changes were happening. I think that you've got to remember that there was a big liberation after the war. Of course, 60s became a, you know, absolute new world. You had the Beatles, you had George Best, you had a completely different happening, you know, and Jimmy was part of that, you know.
How would you think if you were going to take 18 players, 3 players to a car, and you were going to start in Coventry, and you were going into Belgium, you were going into Austria, you were going into Germany, and you were going all over Europe, because that's what we did in Rover 2000.
Well, Jimmy, sky blue footballers and sky blue motor cars. What's it all about this time? Well, we've been touring Europe for a few years now, and we've never made any money. In fact, we've always lost money. So this year, we wanted an idea to make money in Europe. So we approached the Rover Car Company and said, well, look, you take us there, and we'll help you sell your cars. So it's a sort of a football tour to help the export drive.
We can't believe it. We all take turns to drive. We're going down these autobahns at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, handing over water and pop and what you name it. And not only that, we play games as well. And it was just unbelievable.
Well, Jimmy, the very best of luck, both with your football results and your export figures.
Well, thank you very much, Frank, and if we get promotion on the way, we will really sell some cars in Europe. So, cheerio!
The city was buzzing, not only with the football, but industry was going well. The car factories were turning out thousands of cars every week. But there again, Jimmy encompassed that by taking the players round to the car factories to bring the players to the public.
The only time that you didn't want anything from Coventry with a car service was on a Friday afternoon, because everybody was talking about the football.
After the Sky Blues had won on a Saturday, production of cars the following week would be a lot more than if we'd lost.
Jim had this saying that you know, you can beat a club, but you can't beat a club in a city. But people in the car factories and so on, they could actually see a synergy there between themselves and the football club, and that was groundbreaking at the time.
Jimmy, how significant is the football club to the Coventry car worker?
I think it plays a big part in his or her life. I've never worked on an assembly line myself, but I've watched them, and I imagine that at the end of a day, you want something to lift you up. And a weekend away supporting the Coventry City Football Club, I think, gives them that lift.
He did everything for the game, everything he was into. I mean, the publicity on the shirts, he wanted to call Coventry Talbot because of the car at the time. He was ahead of the game all the way through.
I talked to Bill Shankly on one occasion, the old manager of Liverpool, and he said, "It's a bloody circus." I said, "It's not. He's brought life to Coventry. He vitalised everything."
He knew what he wanted to give us for what we'd given Coventry, and that was promotion to the First Division.
If you think what he did in that time, people needed a lot of persuading. In those days, everything was black and white, and for Jimmy to persuade so many people, certainly in charge of football, to persuade them that these ideas that he was having would be radical, they would be brilliant, must have took some doing.
Derek Robbins, chairman of Coventry City Football Club, enjoying the fruits of success. With his manager, Jimmy Hill, Robbins has taken a depressed third division club and transformed it. Together, they've achieved an extraordinary partnership with their supporters, who've come back in their thousands. Commercial awareness, allied to a love of sport, has guided Coventry City into the top flight for the first time.
He brought his mum and dad into the football club. He brought them up from London, and everybody came together. So there was Mr. and Mrs. Hill, his mum and dad behind the bar. There was a lady that did all the cooking, and JH would come and sit with us. So we were a big family.
He celebrated. And he left.
Well, Jimmy, you've shaken Coventry pretty rigid today by this decision. Now, why are you leaving Coventry, and what are you going to do?
Well, why? I'm leaving Coventry because I've decided to give up football management.
He took us into the boardroom, sat us all down, and it was straight talking. He just said, "Well, lads," he says, I'm fed up of 11 people trying to keep me in a job every Saturday afternoon.
I think there's a genuine feeling of disbelief. There was this almost like godlike figure that dragged them up from the third division, cup runs, the Sky Blue Revolution, all that sort of thing. And he's gone. You know, we didn't have our leader anymore.
He was Jimmy Hill, simple as that. He decided to get out of management. He's shrewd enough to get out of management because it's a hard business.
JH decided he was going, and he went into television, and he was controlling his own life. And what a success he made. What a success.
Television had its way back then of doing football. Perhaps it was time for a bit of a shake-up.
You remember when you used to have the sport on a Saturday night, It was Kenneth Wilson home.
Coventry City had their moments of glory against Manchester United, as you can now see.
And he was obviously a professional, but Jimmy brought something different, you know. We had a lot of style about him, Jimmy. I think that's why probably television went for him, you see. I think it was a perfect fit for television football.
Jimmy Hill went to London Weekend to be head of sport. I mean, he had no background in it at all. I mean, it was a very brave decision by somebody. He wouldn't do it today, would you? But he got the job as head of sport and was a very good head of sport.
Jimmy said to me, I've never heard anyone call you Richard. I said, no, they don't. They call me Dick or Dickie. And he said, then I think you should become Dickie Davies. It took me by surprise, and I told my wife, and she wasn't very happy with it. But I became Dickie Davies. It made such an incredible difference. DD, it was easy, it was friendlier. That was very good thinking. And of course, Brian Moore and Jimmy were the partnership that looked after football on ITV in those days.
If it's an ex-player on there all the time talking about the way that you play, about the way somebody else plays, but somebody who's actually been and done it, and then if you factor in coaching, managing, all those kind of things, Jimmy basically ticked every box. He got the whole thing, he got the whole thing about debate, he got television.
Well, Bob, that was a wonderful match.
Jimmy was one of the architects of the great ITV World Cup panel in 1970. That might be the first World Cup where ITV were the talked about channel, because they put together a panel of experts that fired opinions, and Brian Moore and Jimmy stoked them up.
Jimmy said to me, Brian, I wonder if you fancy climbing a mountain with me. Now, I found that irresistible. He said, I want you to be the commentator, that we would have a panel with a difference. We wanted one or two extroverts.
Jimmy had obviously thought about this, and he thought, well, I could get all these really good managers and nice blokes, and they'd all sit there, and they'd all agree with each other. He said, so I'll get these 3 or 4 blokes who were full of angst. Some of them probably didn't like each other. 1 or 2 was slightly arrogant, and it was absolutely fantastic telly.
Guess who just got back today? Them wild-eyed boys that had been away haven't changed, had much to say, but man, I still think them cats are crazy.
The Clan, as we used to call them, they were marvellous, and they were so successful.
Driving all the old men crazy.
I think Derek Dougan was quite prevalent. Cloughie, Paddy Crone might have been on there.
Tactically, we're better, but as a team to watching that, we're a complete.
But why are we tactically better? Why are we tactically better in Europe? Because we play against peasant teams who play primitive ways. Germany and Italy play with a bloody sweeper.
Malcolm, we've had a lot of letters. You'll get the yellow card in a minute from Romanians and Hungarians.
No, I'll tell you what, Jim, I couldn't care less tonight.
Friday night they'll be dressed to kill.
You know, Mal Allison, who was only got one lung, he loved his champagne. They all love champagne.
And if the boys want to fight, you better let them.
We have cleaned up in Europe because they don't know how to play.
It was fun to be with them because they enlivened everything so much. And Jimmy, of course, in the middle of it all.
You mean peasants in that respect, in a football term? We'll make that quite clear.
Everybody was arguing, and there was a pandemonium, really.
You give a red card to anyone that didn't behave themselves or went too far.
They go and play with this sweeper system. This is why we won in Europe. A red card, Malcolm. Like, no one ever seen a red card before, you know, and it was brilliant.
The time I really got to know him was in 1973, when all of a sudden David Coleman ceased to introduce Match of the Day, and they brought Jimmy in from London Weekend.
He was a star on ITV, and he came across to BBC and became a bigger star, but in front of the nation.
Jimmy, of course, had made his name as an analyst rather than as a presenter, but he now sort of almost did both in one go. The thing about Jimmy was he was so incredibly versatile. You know, if you gave him something to do, or you told him that something perhaps he couldn't do, oh, I can do that, you know, he would immediately find a way of getting round that particular issue, which he did.
Well, good evening and welcome to Match of the Day for the start of the 1973-4 season. A vital season for English football, as England, Scotland and Wales desperately fight to qualify for the World Cup.
He looked different, he had lots of energy and enthusiasm, and he presented Match of the Day, which at the time was getting 10, 12 million people every week. Jimmy was very famous.
Yeah, he's buzzing, Jim, of course. He started off where he left off last season. Keep your eye on him.
Jimmy Hill's the biggest star connected with Match of the Day. He was there for the longest period. It sort of all revolved around him. It was his show. I would say he was the biggest fish in it.
Those of you who have white cards, when I say 3, 2, 1, up, they'll all go up.
Jimmy, Jimmy. Jimmy, Jimmy. Jimmy, Jimmy.
I think that's pretty conclusive.
He used to walk into the studio invariably late because wherever he had been around the country at a Match of the Day, he used to go straight back to Notting Hill for dinner. He had a pipe, and that's when he could smoke in the studios. And he had all the newspapers for the Sunday morning, and he used to pick up a newspaper and say, right, let's have a look and see what I said tomorrow. And that got everybody going, you know.
Jimmy had excellent command of the English language, and you know, a lot of times the football community can get the words wrong, and the names wrong, and the sentences wrong, but never Jimmy. Jimmy, whether it was off screen or on screen, I admired him for that as well, because I mean it's live television. Jimmy was like just there, you know, hit it. Camera goes on him, and he was off and running.
Good evening and welcome to Match of the Day on the last Saturday of the Football League season.
And a commentator speaks for 90 minutes, of which only 30 gets on the air. Sometimes that may unbalance the view you get of his commentary. So today, for the first time in television history, we're getting a commentator to evaluate his own performance. Barry Davies?
Well, it's funny, Jim. People always say to you before a match, I suppose to all commentators, give us a good report. And I always say it's what happens down there, not what I say.
I was great company. Great company. You struggled a bit to get a word in sideways, but he was great company.
From the commentator, and thank you very much, Barry, for that, and the viewers will understand a bit more the commentator's point of view in the future.
I remember one time where he used to kind of do the presenting and the analysis, which is truly remarkable, really. Ask yourself a question. He'd do this analysis bit.
As far as I can see, they're fulfilling their promise to attack more and are creating chances, but for a variety of reasons, they're not converting them.
No, I think we could have probably stuck with that and got rid of all these pundits and just make it that the presenter does it. But yeah, only Jimmy would come up with that, and it was unquestionably his idea.
That's a talent, you know. I mean, it really is a talent. You know, the presenting is in itself is a serious talent, and the way he could switch and adapt from being the pundit and giving his views to presenting, but still giving his views.
Well, before we leave that match, I think you'd enjoy a moment's fun, and it occurred at the end of Ron Saunders' interview with Alan Parry at Villa Park. Sorry about the noise.
Brilliant. But then Jimmy was brilliant in ridiculous situations.
It was raining all night here, and it's been raining all day. It's still dripping down. And indeed, we've had a little bit of a problem inside our hut here today, haven't we, Jim? But I believe the
yes.
BBC Brains, the technical boys, have got onto it.
Well, yes, Tomorrow's World have got an idea, I understand. So that's
very good. How many times have you been in and out with that bucket now?
Stand by, Jimmy.
What's happening there, then? Play the music. Good evening and welcome to a very busy Match of the Day.
Welcome back to Match of the Day and to Football League action.
Sensational, wasn't it? For the fanatical support of their fans alone, a neutral would surely select this game as the perfect cup final. Your commentator, John Watson.
I was a bit in awe of him at first, because, I mean, when I started doing the cup final, he was already a huge personality. And, but he was extremely nice in the sense that because he was so aware, in the nicest possible way, of his own sort of personality, a lot of people would, you know, want to talk to him about all sorts of different things, and it could have been quite irritating. But he always found time to stop, and obviously, he stopped to espouse the Jimmy Hill view. You had to live with that.
He could certainly tell a story.
He was a frustrated toff, I think. He liked fine food, and he liked nice tableware and proper knives and forks and riding to the hunt and hello, hello, and a little stirrup cup. He was out of his time in many ways.
I can remember going to a match in London, and it was in the 70s. It was Liverpool-Arsenal. 20 minutes into the game, the linesman was injured.
who should the emergency linesman be? Jimmy Hill, the man who's put referees and linesmen under the spotlight for so long, now is truly under the spotlight himself, and the crowd know it.
The whole cop went, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere, Jimmy Hill. And you can imagine these days. And was the linesman for the rest of the game.
And Jimmy really turned that round. Oh, Jimmy, hold on.
Nobody in my world of sport has been a bigger doer, go-getter, nice person than Jimmy. He rode to the hounds, not fashionable with some. He was a good horseman.
Jimmy Hill is a man of action. He needs to be fit. There's not much talk of football among the hunting folk, so he gets away from it all when he joins the North Warwick show in the field. He does it well.
And there was one occasion, he was in this hunt and he was trotting along on his horse with about 2 or 3 ladies with him. And so he reined his horse back so the ladies could go first. And as they went through, Jimmy's horse farted. So he said, I'm terribly sorry. And she said, I thought it was a horse.
What I really want to know is, are you as sick as a parrot?
I'm what they call OTM. Over the moon and all the bloody fences.
He was a 9-handicap golfer. He was a dancer. He wasn't a great singer, but he loved to lead a sing-song. He and Gracie Fields, bless her, they would have got on like a house on fire. Or even Dolly Parton.
Steady boy.
He didn't do steady when it came to himself, not really. He was too busy talking.
So you stop the goalkeeper coming out one way, and in the end you see he makes him kick it off his weak foot. So he makes the goalkeeper go the way.
I see that. Well, I didn't know. I didn't understand that strategy. But see now that shows you why you have to have brains, doesn't it? Because it is an exciting thing. It's the women that knew what the hell they were doing. They'd be down here watching this game and enjoying it, watching all these lovely men doing, you know, wonderful athletic things.
I think she's wonderful, don't you? I think all the girls are wonderful.
There were 3 or 4 different ladies in his lifespan and everything else, but that was JH, and I just have to shrug my shoulders and smile, and I can't say anymore.
He married 3 times, had 5 children. Jamie is the youngest.
He was always on the run, Dad. Well, you name it, from having Bruce Forsyth on holiday to getting to see some fantastic football. It came with benefits. The strangest thing was, when he wasn't at home, I had a big cardboard cutout of him, life-size, in the room, which was almost like having him on telly. I guess the thing I can say is that when I went to school, people always knew who I was because your dad was on telly.
The man on the telly went back to Coventry as a director and started recruiting. Terry Yorath, for example, headhunting the Jimmy Hill way.
Jimmy arranged to meet my dad in a service station. It was supposed to be a secret meeting. My dad pulled into the service station and a white Jaguar pulled in, and he couldn't see Jimmy Hill in the car, and he thought, this is all very strange. It was all very cloak and dagger. And then slowly the boot opened and Jimmy Hill got out of the boot. And he'd been hiding in the boot all the way to the service station. He was so paranoid about being seen approaching a player that potentially he shouldn't have been talking to at that time.
My dad was either managing director or chairman, come back to help out Coventry. The big signing was Terry Yorath. It was all secret, so he came to the house. But part of the deal was that Terry's wife, Christine, wanted the house, so we moved around the corner to Fairlands Park, and the Yoraths were given 19 Cannon Hill Road as part of the deal.
So when we moved into Jimmy Hill's house, they had a dog called Sally, who was a tiny little miniature poodle. She didn't want to leave the house, so when they moved up the road, she kept coming back and visiting the house, and eventually we adopted her to the point where when we moved to Vancouver Whitecaps, she then got moved to my grandparents, and then they looked after her for the rest of her days. So yeah, Jimmy Hill's dog. It was a nice housewarming gift to get a dog with the house.
Yeah, fond memories. Spent a lot of time in the garden kicking a ball around. Yeah. I mean, this is the only house that's been altered or split. The neighbour's house is still exactly the same. Yeah, it's remarkably untouched.
I was 5 years old and we moved into Jimmy Hill's house because he bought my dad for the club. To me, you know, as a kid, he was my dad's boss. It was later on in life I learned that he was a lot more than just the chairman of Coventry City.
Have you booked your seat yet? Enjoy all the thrills of First Division football in comfort and safety from your very own seat at the new Coventry City all-seater stadium. Call the Sky Blue Link line.
Coventry City? Yes, we have. We've got plenty of tickets for this evening.
When Jim came back to Coventry in the mid-70s, perhaps that little knack of knowing what the public wanted had kind of diminished a little bit. I mean, the all-seater stadium at the start wasn't the biggest success in the world. You know, we lost probably about 25% of the fan base that we had that really didn't come back.
That period was very difficult, I think, in Coventry's time, and he just wanted to be on board to see if he could change their fortunes again, in as much as he could with his broadcasting career and everything else.
More details have emerged about the rebel football tour of South Africa. Today, Jimmy Hill, chairman of Coventry...
The magic touch seemed to have deserted him. He had to apologise for his part in leading the rebel tour to South Africa. So many ideas, not all of them brilliant.
He was a visionary. He took the game to the Americas, took it to the Middle East.
Jimmy and the club made a mistake in going into America and lost money. But 99% of Jimmy's ideas did go well and were hugely successful.
I think it was Jimmy more than anybody else who got the 3 points for a win, because it had to be passed by committees and all this type of thing. But I think it was Jimmy that said, oh, that would make the game a lot more entertaining. And he was absolutely right, because suddenly teams weren't always playing for a draw, they were playing for 2 extra points.
Everyone was saying, well, why? The game's good enough. No. If you keep drawing, you're not going to get any excitement, you're not going to get anything at all for what football needs today. He got his way, and it became, like it is today, 3 points for a win and 1 for a draw. And that was Jimmy Hill. He did that. He did that himself. He pushed and pushed and pushed until it was done.
Jimmy was a very, very good man to have on a committee, in my opinion, because he was inquiring, he asked questions, he saw things, he saw reasons why you could do things, not reasons why you couldn't do things.
I saw this ad in the paper which said, BBC TV sports personality with dog seeks super efficient PA. Well, I can't type. I don't know anything about sport, but I do love dogs. So I rang the agency and said, who's it for? And they said, oh, it's Jimmy Hill. I said, sorry, Jimmy Hill, you know, beard, football, whatever. And I thought, well, I need the work. He was sitting in his office, busy on the phone. I think it was to Elton John. Name drop, name drop. He was charming and lovely and charismatic and much taller than I thought he was going to be. He's 6 foot tall, because you only see this much on television. And I'm very pleased I was given the job. He worked around my limitations. The rest is history, as it were.
There was always this sense that, how to put it, upheaval was never far away. It came next in his television career, when he was moved out of the presenter's chair. Not that he went far.
Well, Jimmy will be running his experienced football eye over 2 nights' matches, as he will throughout this cup season, and passing a comment or 2 or 3. Of course, I've got a different style to Jimmy. Everybody's got a different style to Jimmy. And he's also looking after my cough mixture, right, Jim?
Large or small one?
No ice.
Obviously, Jimmy was actually a presenter himself, but when Des came in, Des had that kind of charm, didn't he? And I think he could bring out the best in Jimmy and bring out the cheeky side in Jimmy. I think Jimmy was one of those pundits that would make you think you'd either massively disagree with him or categorically agree with him. He was like, there was no middle ground with Jimmy.
He lifted his foot up and let the ball come, so he dummied his own goalkeeper.
He wouldn't have left that go on purpose there, Jim. I mean, there's no way
well,
he's
you
going to
saw it as well as I did.
No, but I don't think he let it go.
People used to say, Cor, that was great last night. You don't like him, do you? Get in the taxis and the cab drivers say, you don't like Jimmy Hill, do you? I said, yes, I do. I do like Jimmy Hill.
I mean, he's not going to let it go, hope the goalkeeper's going to get it. He misjudged it.
What is taking your foot out of the way of it?
No, I don't think he did.
I said, I'm not having anyone say anything about him, sort of thing. So he said, do you really? I said, no, I don't like him, you're right. He said, I told you didn't like him. So it got me in the end.
Terry, of course, worked with Jimmy on the England games, and they were quite friendly. And Jimmy was demonstrating how a particular player had done something, and Terry was nudging me and laughing because Jimmy was going, well, you do it that way, and I could have done that. And meaning that what the player had done wasn't that remarkable. I could have done that, and all the way home, and for years later, Terry Venables always just say, well, do you remember that time we were at Fulham and Jimmy was telling us about that? We just go, I could have done that.
And if you put your arm up, you risk having a penalty. If I'd have been the manager, and all of a sudden, with Gascoigne looking as if he'd been rejuvenated.
He had an opinion, and damn right he had one. I'm very happy about that.
Nevertheless, it is a foul, isn't it?
The attention is to the ball. For me, you know, that was also the first stages of being a pundit. To have at least to have an argument about things. That was good.
Liverpool played Blackburn Rovers in the FA Cup third round at Ewood Park.
Yesterday we certainly had the let-off of this season and perhaps any other season, with Liverpool just escaping and staying in the Cup.
And Liverpool equalised in the last minute because the ball boy, as it would seem, Blackburn ball boy, had been kind enough to throw the ball back quickly. So Des just throws into the air. Well, did you spot anything yesterday, Jimmy, that might have caught people's eyes? Well, what about the ball boy at Ewood Park?
This was the goal.
The point that I picked up was the alertness of a ball boy, and in fact, really, his naivety. And when this ball goes out and Blackburn Rovers are under pressure, just watching a moment, the ball boy there to do it's a ball girl, in fact, doing her duty, picks it up, gives it back quickly before Rovers can recover. They're still trying to get back in position.
She was doing her job very well. She's not part of the tactics of the game, is she?
But that's how near Liverpool were to being out.
It was a bit like it hadn't sunk in sort of thing. No, it can't be me, really. Until I'd seen everybody out on the street and everybody else who'd seen Match of the Day.
You said if she threw the ball back and they were not able to get back, they were all perfectly placed, and he normally would deal with that in a lot different way.
I went to school and every lad in the school year followed me all the way around. She's here, you shouldn't have done that. I got a phone call at school when my parents had to come and pick me up and take me to Ewood Park because it obviously hit the press, and that's when it all sort of hit home as well.
So now, Jimmy's got us on the front page of every newspaper on the Monday.
You're a tele-twit, Jimmy. I think he got more name calling than me. Hill climbs down. That's where he's admitted that he's gone a bit far and apologised. Ball girl Gillian Maynard won a special award for her honesty and a big apology.
He's supposed to turn up on the Monday evening to do the live match. He turns up late. Why does he turn up late? Because he's found the address of the little girl and said sorry. And that is Jimmy.
I remember it was at Norwich, and it was Cantona, and I think Jimmy had called the tackle despicable, which it probably was, but Alex called him a prat, and Jimmy would have loved it. It was Jimmy back in the headlines again. He loved being in the headlines. Jimmy just adored being in the headlines.
Mr. Ferguson, as he was then, afterwards was very generous in his apology to Jimmy, and Jimmy was equally gracious in his acceptance of the apology and said, let's finish that bottle of whiskey when we next meet.
If you had an incident like that, then the next time he'd have a spring in his step, and he'd be coming up with the next idea, the next big idea, and what he was going to say and how he'd get the public on his side. It would have to be Lynham, they'd have to rein him in. Des Lynham was the only one that could rein Jimmy in.
He was the easiest of all the pundits to work with in the sense that he was always going to fill up lots of time, he had lots of opinions. The biggest problem with Jimmy was shutting him up.
Jimmy Hill, see all, hear all and know all. An expert on this, an expert on that, and an expert on the other.
I always felt, you know, we've got a lot of nice guys. We need a little bit of a villain in there.
Who said, I am the greatest, I am the best? I think it was me, and even if it wasn't, it should have been.
Des would occasionally come out of the hut that was built at the back of the stand as a presentation studio, and the crowd would cheer. And then Jimmy would come out to get some fresh air, and they'd boo. And it was like one of those weather things that meant like this. Big cheer for Des, big boo for Jimmy, and Jimmy didn't mind.
I remember him saying about the Irish team, I think we're just going to the Euros to make up the numbers, which of course they took great delight in proving him, and rightly, that he was wrong. He instigated conversation and debate with his views and his statements.
And he had a brilliant relationship with particularly the Scottish football fans.
I think we all remember Jimmy Hill and the David Nary toe poke, as he called it, which upset the Scots somewhat.
Toe poke? Absolutely. I mean...
This is Souness. Looks for Walk. Nary's coming through from right back.
Yes, Nary hit an absolute bullet from about 30 yards or something. Jimmy described it as a toe poke.
But that was a classic Jimmy. He'd just do something slightly provocative.
Which drove the Tartan army beyond despair. They were going crazy.
This Braveheart, who was about 6'2", wearing a kilt and a sporran, the whole dress, said, toe poke, was it, Jimmy? And Jimmy went, well, he said, taking the pipe out of the mouth. When I was playing, you see, a toe poke was a skill. Let's have a drink.
He persuaded them that toe poke, that was an old-fashioned view of how he actually hit the ball, but that was Jimmy.
I sat down with Jimmy, and Jimmy did qualify it, and he did say it was certainly one of the greatest toe pokes that he'd ever seen.
You know, he used to wear that bow tie, and sometimes an England bow tie, and that used to go up the Scots fans' nose a bit. But he didn't bother with that. He probably quite enjoyed the bit of heckling he got from the Scottish fans, I suppose.
I'm got my hand in my heart. I can remember singing songs about Jimmy Hill, you know. One song for Bobby Moore, maybe two for Ballwood, about 8 for Jimmy. And we used to sing, we hate Jimmy Hill, he's a, we hate... And that used to go on relentlessly for about 20 minutes in each half. But as I say, it was all done in great taste, and Jimmy loved it.
The Scottish fans, he says, when I go to Scotland, he says, they're always great. I say, well, that's the Scots people. If you go up there and you're on your own, they'll be great to you. Try getting off a bus at Hampden and see how you're treated.
Jimmy, Jimmy. Jimmy, Jimmy, oh.
It didn't matter if people hated him, because he felt that was recognition. You know, love me or hate me, but don't ignore me.
If he'd allowed McManaman a freer role in the centre, he'd have opened up his options for Fowler, because Fowler was in the best position...
Jimmy, be quiet, will you?
Also, Collymore could break through the Spurs' defence. You won't get it better than that 109 times.
Jimmy, Jimmy. Jimmy, Jimmy, oh.
You know, he was forever getting scripts autographed, balls autographed, shirts autographed. He'd have an auction for this, an auction for that. He'd do the auction for this, or he'd do the auction for that. Jimmy was in demand, but Jimmy was a very kind-hearted man, so he'd turn up for everything.
Oh, it was boundless. It was hard work keeping up with him sometimes, because it wasn't just one event during the day. Sometimes it would be 2 or 3 and more. If he was asked to do something and he'd look in his diary, said, OK, I think I can do you between so-and-so and so-and-so. Off he'd steam with the appropriate paperwork or clothes and things, and he'd do that. He just couldn't say no. He was very generous with his time.
Hey, nervous?
Yeah.
Thought you were.
Never done anything like this before.
What do you mean? Santa's Claus, is this in the car?
No, giving away £5,000.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Sir, may I present, on behalf of the gold diggers, a cheque for £5,000?
The only maddening thing is you've got to dish it out, man.
Yes.
Oh, there's a boundary goes with it. Why
This is
unusual.
unusual. GD. GD. Gold digger.
Jimmy Dill.
Jimmy Dill.
I like that.
Thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Well, I thought it was great.
I enjoyed it.
Lovely place, isn't it? Beautiful place. I've had worse digs than this.
Yes,
I'll tell you.
yes,
When
I
I was
think you
recently
have.
on tour.
Yeah. Now that we've discussed entertainment for a moment, what about changing place with Edward Heath and running the country?
And I will when I've finished with Saudi Arabia, Coventry City and BBC Sport.
I did learn a lot of him. The one big thing is that either be dramatically right or dramatically wrong. Don't be mundane and be in the middle, because that doesn't work.
Jimmy was really interesting because the public loved and hated him in equal measure, I think, but they hated him with a sense of friendliness. And I remember telling him one day that there'd been a newspaper survey and he'd finished top first as the most favourite sports presenter in the country. He was absolutely delighted, lovely. And I said, well, there's a bit of bad news as well, Jim, because you've also finished least favourite sports presenter first. He said, lovely as well. The place not to finish is in the middle of those bloody things. And he was right, he was right.
Yes, I remember his great debate when the Romanian team dyed their hair, so they were all blondes. And Jimmy had a theory that this actually was to their advantage.
Do you know, that is not an idiotic idea. What? I don't think.
For them all to go blonde?
No, I mean, you just listen, just listen.
The other members of the panel were almost in hysterics, but it was a point of view.
You need a bright shirt to pass to, and your vision is that much better, right? And a light head.
This is very
you
good,
can
Jimmy.
laugh. You can laugh as much as you like.
You couldn't knock him down with a demolition ball, honestly. He was irrepressible with a capital I, a fantastic character.
Split glance like that, you see ahead and lay the ball to it. The tiniest 1% advantage in this game gives you a result.
He knew what he was doing, Jimmy. Jimmy was a very, very clever man, as I say, and a very likeable man.
Football people were critical of him. The fans were critical of him, and sometimes dismissive of him. But I would think they laughed with him more than at him.
The 98 World Cup was the one really where people thought, well, goodness me, he's been going for ages. You know, do you think perhaps now is the time? Because, of course, it was 30 years since he'd started with Brian Moore on the big match.
We had a really special time, particularly in France, 98. We hated missing anything. Whether it was a half a lager or a conversation or a game of golf, a chat about football, a lunch, a dinner. Jimmy was the first name in the list, and that was the way we wanted it. You know, he hated not being in the gang.
People used to come up to him in the street and say, you look younger in real life. He said, you must have a very old television. But he was always making fun of himself. And I think, you know, he'd been in people's living rooms for, gosh, 25 years with Match of the Day, I think he did, and beyond. So he was part of the wallpaper.
25 years of night work ended. Jimmy just started again, part of the brunch brigade.
I think what you have to appreciate when Jimmy Hill joined Sky, we were still very much a fledgling company. And I'd get a phone call every other day. Oh, Mark, I've got an idea. We can go and do this and we can go and do that. And I think it was that infectious enthusiasm that Jimmy, even then, still had in him.
As a player, Jimmy never had his name taken. Only Michael Aspel was able to book him.
Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the interruption, but I can't reach you very well. But Fulham chairman and man for all seasons, Jimmy Hill, this is your life.
Irrepressible, indestructible. Of course, he couldn't be. He was never knowingly wrong, but things could go wrong, as they did in the early 1990s.
I mean, I'm not very comfortable talking about it now, although I want to talk about it because I want to say to people, it isn't the end of the world if you get cancer. You know, surgeons are marvellous. There is help out there. So, you know, get yourself together, let them do the stuff, and you might win a match or two. I'll be back in a week, maybe sooner than you think. The weather for hunting isn't kind. Maybe then I'll change my mind. Thank you for a happy time. In consequence, this little rhyme.
When his time with Coventry finished, he would always be aware of what was going on, be very involved. He would look at the results every Saturday and Tuesday to see how Coventry did before anything, before Fulham even and Brentford. Of course, he loved his golf, he loved riding. It was perfect for him. And it was a very, very happy period in his time.
Coventry City were changing again. They were moving home, and Jimmy had to be there.
A celebration of the wonderful Highfield Road. And Jimmy was out there on the pitch. That's where he made Jimmy Hill great. He made Coventry City great. And he watched that game with a tremendous amount of emotion. Great celebration because we won the game. But he was very emotional. He knew that it was the end, the closure of Highfield Road.
A little bit eerie. It's sad to think it was once a football ground. I'd have been watching from over there, and what I always remember about the pitch as a young kid is if it got beyond the halfway spot, watching from that side, you could only see the players from their knees up because the pitch was always a little little bit of drainage curve on it. The away support would have been down there. You'd hear the odd choice word. Jimmy Hill's a fill in the blank spaces. But yeah, he had very, very thick skin, and you know, was more than able to cope with, and that kind of rubbed off on the family. You just got used to it. Yeah, if this is the centre circle that I used to stare at the start of every game, Mick Ferguson, Ian Wallace kicking off, those are what I'd take from standing here, more than anything else. Those happy times. I mean, it's a housing estate, isn't it now?
Footballers never look back and say, thanks very much for somebody like 25 years ago. He fought for things that he believed in, and he beat them when it came to the maximum wage, and a lot of footballers should be thankful for that.
Players of today have to be grateful for that transition from abolishing the maximum wage that Jimmy Hill was involved in to where they're standing today. Very wealthy young men, very, very wealthy young men. They can raise their hat to that man because of that.
I don't think there was ever a person in football that I met that loved the game more than Jimmy Hill. It was just non-stop relentless to improve everything about the game on the pitch and off the pitch. And there's not many people a bit like that.
His last public appearance was a tricky one to organise because he was then under the effects of Alzheimer's. But you wouldn't have known that when the unveiling happened and the crowd started singing, and he knew the song, he knew the words, and he was cheering and just getting the crowd to sing even louder, and he was singing at the top of his voice, and he was so happy, and tears pouring down his face. It was a very emotional time, and I'm thrilled that that last appearance was in Coventry with the statue, because it was a fitting end to his public appearance, if you like, his public life.
I did my very best to help, and you know, one or two of the things that I did, I've just realised they're okay.
He loved the people, he loved the enthusiasm, the gentleness of the people, I think, and his heart really was in Coventry, very much so, and always will be. In fact, I might do a wobble, but I'm taking his ashes, a few of his ashes, up to Coventry to be scattered in the memorial garden, so he can be there.
We're here to reverently place the earthly remains of Jimmy Hill in this special place, near this home ground for the football club and for the city which Jimmy loved.
You know, it's almost like he's going to walk back in. In fact, when we're at the cathedral, he's such a powerful personality, you kind of want to, hang on a minute, I'm not finished yet, I'm coming back. But no, it's a fitting tribute.
And here he is, still standing, the completely one-off Jimmy Hill. Gone, but only into football legend.
I'm sure somebody else has told this story, but my favourite is when, you know, I was there that day when the crowd started singing.
And me, Jim, and Des Lynam were inside having a coffee. Anyway, Jimmy goes out in front. Come on, let's go. Me and Des are up. We open that no one sees us. He's up the front, 3 yards in front of us.
Mr. Hill and I are walking around the ground, and the whole of 30,000 people started chanting, not quite in his favour. And the chant went,
Jimmy Hill, you're
a banker, or words to that effect.
Jimmy Hill's a Jimmy Hill's a
Jimmy Hill's a Jimmy Hill's a
Des, Terry and myself looked anywhere but the cop. Jimmy just put his chin out and said,
that's fame for you.
Well, that's fame for you.
Well, that's fame for you. I was a bit more Bruce Forsyth than Jimmy Hill, but they're similar.
He said, see, they love me here. He didn't realise they were having a go here. He said, I may be, but I always get the last laugh.